Yeah, great question. So a lot does depend on these projections. Where federal revenue and spending goes is itself a direct function in many ways on what we assume interest rates, real GDP, nominal GDP, inflation, all of that is going to matter for what we see projected forward from the federal government. And these are projections that are formed not just internally. So the government doesn't itself kind of contemplate what it envisions for nominal GDP and inflation and so on. It surveys a broad set of private sector forecasters and then takes uh, the average of those to formulate its own economic projections. So I think it's about a dozen entities that it surveys, largely financial institutions, but also the Conference Board and other forecasters, and that's what informs the economic projections used in the budget. And so, in that sense, I think that's a really responsible way for a government to go about constructing its economic projections. It's something where it's not something that the Minister of Finance will decide. It's really outsourcing that work to a broad set of private sector forecasters. And so in that sense, I certainly have no grounds to question the quality of those projections, although we do need to keep in mind that the future is uncertain, and so there is risks to any projection. I think in terms of the big things like productivity growth, it's been so incredibly disappointing to see not just low productivity growth, but negative productivity growth over so many of our past recent quarters, something that we do not see south of the border. And so incorporating productivity considerations into all of our policy choices going forward is, I think, something that needs to take center stage in order to improve things there. Now, for its part, the Bank of Canada does project that later on this year, we'll start to see quarterly growth in productivity, reversing the contraction that we've been seeing. So hopefully that comes to pass. That will help not just government finances, but economic conditions generally. And then in terms of inflation and interest rates, I do see that coming down. Inflationary pressures, while they still remain, especially in that shelter category that I mentioned, we're seeing other inflationary sources that were important previously have completely eased. So energy prices are no longer contributing, food prices as well. The year-over-year comparison still shows above target increases in those prices, but over the past few months, the pace of the month-over-month changes in food have really returned to historically normal levels. And so if rent prices and shelter prices can come, the pace of that growth can come down to historically normal levels, and that's it. So that's the one piece left in terms of tackling inflation. So I do put a lot of weight in the bank's own projections that inflation will begin to get close to target even just later this year.